Welcome to the D Shift podcast, where we provide inspiration, motivation, and education to help you transition from the challenges of divorce to discover the freedom and ability to live life on your own terms. Are you ready? Let's get this shift started. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the D Shift podcast. And for all you people who are worried about your financial stuff, I have got the perfect guest today. I would like to welcome Kaki Perdue. She is an advice-only financial planner, and she has her own company called Look Both Ways Financial, which I think is a great name, by the way. So it's one of those names that sticks in your head. She's a certified financial planner and a certified public accountant. And like I say, she offers advice-only financial planning. So, Kaki, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Marty. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, and I'm excited too, because I think you bring a completely different perspective on this. We've had other financial planners and people who have come on the show who are more geared towards a specific product or a specific service. But I want to talk to you about what an advice-only financial planner is. But before we get into that, I would like you to tell us a little bit about your background and why this is your area of passion.
Yeah, so I started my career in public accounting as a CPA, worked at a CPA firm for over 10 years. And I also got to lead the mentoring program while I was at the firm, which I loved. I really enjoyed mentoring. And I shifted, I was, a year away from making partner. And I thought, what does my life look like as a partner? And then what does my life look like as a chief financial officer? Because I had a role in front of me. So I decided to make the switch, and I worked as a chief financial officer for a technology company for 6 years. I learned a lot about budgeting and strategic planning. And then my friends started asking me, hey, Kaki, I have some extra money and I don't know what to do with it. Or I'm in a little bit of debt and I don't know where to go from here. And I found that the best hour of my whole week was the hour that I spent helping those friends or family. And sometimes those people I didn't even know. They're just like, my friends referred me somebody to talk to. And I said, okay, I have to do this full time. And that's when I pivoted and decided to go become a certified financial planner. Now, why is my firm advice only? That's a very different route than the traditional financial planning firms, right? I wanted to create a firm that I needed when I was 25 and 30 and 35, that I needed that service. And I genuinely believe that everyone has a right to solid, real financial planning, regardless of their net worth. So that's what I'm trying to provide.
Oh, I love that idea, because so many people that I know and I've worked with through the divorce have gone to financial planners, and because they have a relatively low income or low net worth, it's kind of like, well, this isn't really the service you need, or it's $85,000 up front. Not quite that bad, but it's $8,000 to work with me for a year, and these people maybe have $5,000 to invest. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to go that route. So, what's another advantage to that advice only financial planning? Does it open up the doors for people to consider maybe options that you wouldn't if you were going to a financial planner selling program A or program B?
Right. So that's a good question. The the biggest selling feature for me is that I'm a fiduciary 100% of the time. And if you work with somebody that works for a firm, insert any large, investment firm name here, they might be paid a commission on investments that they put in your portfolio. They might not. They might be influenced by selling you mutual funds that their firm manages and that are proprietary to their firm, and they get paid by the firm that they're working for. So there's a much larger potential for conflict of interest. When I'm doing advice only, The biggest conflict of interest is, are we working on an hourly basis? And, how many hours is this going to take? But there's not any conflicts of interest around products that I'm recommending because I'm not receiving any kind of compensation for those products.
Right.
So I might, and I like to look at things in a goal-based manner. So what are your financial goals and how can we accomplish those goals? And then we're going to look at different ways to get there with investments and how can we do that with limited risk? So that way you're not having to take on additional risk and in a cost-effective manner. How can we do this with using perhaps low-cost index funds?
Yeah.
Because Marty, this is the crazy thing. On Wall Street, they have all these geniuses working on these, mutual funds, right? But even with all those geniuses getting paid so much money on Wall Street, only 2 out of 10 times in any given year is the managed mutual fund going to beat the index that it's trying to that it's parallel to.
Right.
So
Wow.
8 times out of 10, you're better off using a low cost index fund. And sometimes advisors that are compensated by their large firms and they're not complete fiduciaries are not going to put you in that low cost index fund.
Yeah. So you've used a word a couple of times that I want to just take a step back because I think I understand what it means, but I would like to hear from an expert. Fiduciary. What does that specifically mean to me as the consumer going to you when you say you have full fiduciary duty to me? What does that mean?
Yeah. So a fiduciary means that I'm legally obligated to put your best interest ahead of my own. I have to keep your best interest in mind. There's another standard out there called the suitability standard, and suitability is way less vigorous. And that if out of all the financial advisors out there, maybe 10% of them are fiduciaries, the other 90% are using the suitability standard. Suitability is more like, well, yeah, kind of. I can come up with a reason why this would sort of maybe meet your needs, and so it's quite different.
Okay. So if I go to somebody like you're obviously not yourself because you are a full fiduciary financial planner. If I went to another financial planner in any other firm, could I ask them, are you a fiduciary? Can I ask that question?
Yes, you can and you should ask that.
Okay.
And don't get me wrong, there may be perfectly good financial advisors that also take your, best interest at heart, out there working for large firms that are also charging in a different structure than I do. But you just definitely, the best thing to ask is if they're a fiduciary.
Okay. And so I like that's an important question to ask because we're all about being open and honest and finding the best professionals. And so again, there are, like you said, Kaki, there are great professionals that are working for big companies. There's great professionals working for small companies, and there's lousy professionals working for best of those companies. Same for attorneys, doctors, teachers, you name it. So it's really important to do your homework and know what kind of questions to ask. So let's talk a little bit, if you don't mind, about what you actually do with people. And I believe, because you and I talked a little bit before this, it's been a couple of months now since we spoke, but I think one of the things that I was really impressed with is how you help people maybe look at setting priorities around what to do with their money or what do they want to see done with their money. And I'm thinking for people, especially for women going through the divorce process, there might be a lump sum money that comes at some point in time, either as part of the settlement or there's going to be, some kind of maybe an alimony or child support or whatever. What happens or how do you help people prioritize what they should do with that?
That is a great question. As I mentioned earlier, I like goal-based financial planning. And it helps to have that flag of what am I working towards and why am I going to sacrifice today for that future goal? So I like goal-based planning. I like then we set up goals of how do we need this money to work for you? Do you have a emergency fund set up? And is it the right amount? And let's face it, coming out of a divorce, there's so much uncertainty and angst, and you may or may not be relaunching into a new career. The list goes on and on. So I am probably thinking that we're gonna might need a larger safety fund than maybe somebody else that's been working in the same job for 20 years and has feels like they have total job security. And after we then we will take a look at an ongoing annual spend and income and create a forward-looking intentional spending plan. A lot of people hate budgets. Budgets are they stink, man. Who wants to count every dollar along the way, right?
In that divorce, you have to do that detailed budget, and it drives people crazy. Like, literally, how much do you spend on toothpaste? That's almost the detail it gets down to. So yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So I don't like that. It's not very fun. So I prefer to do a forward-looking thoughtful spending plan, intentional thoughtful spending plan. And it's meant to be like 85%, the 80-20 rule, get it like 80% there. So it's big picture, you need to know how much money you're bringing in, and you need to know what your fixed costs are. You need to know what the rent's going to cost, childcare if you have it, utilities. It can be an average, but we need to know these numbers.
yeah,
And once we have that big picture, then we can decide and allocate if there's discretionary funding in this pot of incoming money every month. How do we want to allocate that? Whether it's, contributing to a Roth IRA or employer-sponsored retirement plan, or maybe you want to do college savings for your children and setting up a 529 plan. We will work through based on your goals where we should allocate that money. And if let's say you've received a one-time big divorce settlement, then we want to be very thoughtful about when and how we're going to invest that money, because timeline matters.
yeah,
If you think you might need to be spending the money anytime in the next 1, 3, even 5 years, we do not want that money in the stock market, because if we get a big correction and the
yeah,
market tanks 20%, it can take 3 years for the market to come back. And so that money does not belong in the stock market, period. And
yeah.
and luckily there's other options for earning some interest along the way.
What about, and I hear this all the time with women going through divorce, and it doesn't seem to matter what their level of income is what about the feeling of, I don't have any discretionary income right now? And I'm thinking particularly during the divorce process where nothing's in place, there's no temporary orders, there's nothing. Like everybody's just kind of doing their own thing with it when it comes to money. What do you suggest? Should people wait until this may be kind of putting you on the spot, so I'm not asking you to give anybody legal advice or make any determination, but does it make sense to come and see you before they have a clear picture of what that divorce settlement might look like, or what, a lump sum payment might look like, or what assets they're going to pull out of the divorce? Or does it make more sense to wait until they have a clearer picture and then go and talk to you about what to do next?
Well, it's always helpful to know ahead of time if they're expecting a settlement. We can do some simple things, even as just setting them up a brokerage account, and where which is a smart way to plop the money in. And brokerage accounts right now, you can invest in a money market fund and be earning around 5%. So that way you have a holding spot for that money to land that's even going to earn you some interest in the interim period. I think it's also helpful to have a plan ahead of time. Always better to plan first and then adjust as you go along. It can be real easy to spend some of that money that comes in from the settlement in maybe not the smartest way, because let's face it, when we're coming out of a divorce, and I've never been through a divorce, but I have friends that have, and relatives. If you're coming out of a divorce, sometimes you're not thinking clearly and you're loaded down with tons of emotions, and it's just tough. So having a plan ahead of time can help sometimes prevent unforced errors.
Yeah, you've got a really neat term that you used the last time that we spoke about, and that's revenge spending. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, it's funny. I have another picture. We'll talk about revenge spending too, but I want you to imagine that you have a backpack on and two suitcases, and you're standing on a boat, and the backpack and suitcases are loaded with like really important stuff. And something happens, and you end up in the water, and you still have your backpack and suitcases. If you're going to survive, you have to let go of those suitcases to swim, and you have to let go in order to swim. Well, now imagine that the backpack is the divorce and the suitcases are the emotional baggage that come along with the divorce. It could be it could be disappointment, it could be anger, it could be sadness, any range of emotions.
Sure.
As you exit that divorce, to really thrive, you need to be able to let go of those suitcases so that you can swim. And revenge spending, if you don't let go of those suitcases, then guess what can pop up is revenge spending. And it's because I'm not feeling enough. I feel sad. I feel lonely. I feel insert emotion here. Because I don't feel enough, then I'm going to overspend and go spend too much. And that can come in the form of handbags or cars or jewelry or whatever. You're spending because it's the emotional outlet.
Yeah.
So being able to recognize that is huge. And it's okay to feel the emotions. Of course, you're going to feel the emotions. Um, so learning to avoid that, if you can avoid that revenge spending, that's amazing. And part of it is learning to drop those emotional suitcases so you can swim.
Yeah, and I appreciate that because I honestly work with my clients a lot on that is how to get rid of those emotions because that does happen. I have worked with people who have bought condos in different states that they don't even particularly like visiting that state. And they got, somebody has presented this opportunity to make this fantastic investment in this condo that's going to be an Airbnb, and they've spent like $250,000 in a partnership in this condo, and they're never going to see that money again. They're not going to be able to get it back. And it's just like gone because now they're in with another group of people who don't want to sell. So then they got to find somebody to buy them out. It's just, oh my gosh, I've heard so many horror stories about this kind of stuff. So yeah.
Yeah. And it's sort of the same with obviously when you're going through a divorce, you're also going through a tremendous loss. If somebody loses a parent or a spouse, or if they have a death and they've lost a close loved one, we recommend not spending any money, not spending money is not right, not making any major financial decisions, selling a house, buying a condo for at least 9 months
Right.
post, because you need time for your brain to settle back into, okay, this is my new normal.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that for a lot of women, and I think that's where like divorce coaching can really help, is letting people know this is going to happen after the divorce. This is normal. You're going to experience, you're going to have this yo-yo emotion. You're going to have this kind of sense of like your whole world just shifts like overnight. And all of a sudden, you're going from maybe a 2-income, fairly affluent financial situation as a couple to a single parent, 1 income, far less affluent, because divorce hurts both sides. Nobody gets rich during the divorce in most cases. So both partners see a drop in that income. So definitely.
That's right. I have one more comment on that too, Marty, to add on. If you come out of the divorce and you end up with a bucket of credit card debt, I think the best thing is like, don't beat yourself up. Say to yourself, okay, this is my starting point. This is my step 0. And this is now my responsibility. And I know I'm capable of handling this. And what are the steps I need to do to move forward?
Right.
But you don't have to beat yourself up if you overspend and make mistakes. Just own it.
Yeah.
Own it. Say, "Yep, I did that when I was not in my best self," and move on
Yeah.
and figure out a way to move forward.
Yeah, and one thing I have noticed, Kaki, and I don't know, I don't certainly work with people at the financial depth that you do. I'm more superficial, but credit card companies, especially since COVID, seem to be a lot more accommodating if you go to them and you say, "Hey, I've got this problem. I've been through a divorce. Can we work on a repayment plan?" They seem to be, and I'm not just saying broad sweep every single credit card company, but most of my clients seem to be getting a more positive response from them as opposed to before it was like, "No, that's your payment schedule. These are the penalties. These are the fines. Pay it."
It's always worth a phone call to ask. It
Yeah.
never hurts to ask.
Yeah.
And credit card companies have to spend a lot of money to bring in new customers. So if they can keep you as a customer, and if you can be nice to them on the phone and let them know that you like working with them, that you've been a long time customer, that you want to stay with them, and you want to have a lower interest rate, they
Yeah.
may say yes.
That's what I was going to say. A lot of them are willing to drop that interest rate, sometimes by, a few percentage, which makes a big difference if you've got a big credit card debt. So it is worth
Yeah.
looking into. I know one of the other things that you focus on, and I also know that we're almost out of time, which drives me crazy because we just get into these conversations and like 20 minutes are gone. Um, Helping women or people in general, feeling strong and safe and secure about their finances. How does what you do help accomplish that goal for your clients?
Yeah, Marty, I always tell people when I'm introducing my firm, my goal is to help my clients feel safe, strong, and secure managing their own money. There's no more power, I think, in the world than standing in your own truth and stand in your own power. And let's face it, basically everything we do in our daily lives requires money. And if you are in control of your money and you're standing in your own power of your own money, then you yourself can also become powerful in other parts of your life. And and they don't really teach personal finance in school, like hardly at all. And if they did, we've forgotten it. So I'm there to help along the way with the nuances and to teach and to help offer new suggestions and other ways to think through complex problems. But at the end of our process, after we've worked together for a time period, my clients feel so much stronger and safer with their money because they understand what's in their portfolio. They understand why they're investing the way they're investing, and they know where their money is.
Yeah.
And that's powerful.
And knowing that any advice that you're giving them or information or education you're giving them is from that fiduciary client's best interest. There's no ulterior motive in any advice that you give them or anything you talk about with them.
That's right. We create simple portfolios, and simple is elegant. Think Audrey Hepburn, elegant, simple.
Yeah.
And it's the same in investing portfolios. Invest money managers all over, they love to create all this crazy complexity because then they can justify their fees. When in reality, a very simple portfolio can get the job done and can get the job done beautifully. So when you learn and figure out that simple portfolio, it's also easy to understand.
Yeah, wonderful. So Kaki, we've covered a whole bunch of information. And actually, I think that last part almost was like really a highlight for me, just to think of things as simple as possible. What do you think is sort of the golden nugget of wisdom that's important to keep top of the mind after this conversation?
I think it's to continue to educate yourself with and you're a podcast listener, whoever's listening, you're already doing step number one, which is listening to this podcast, which is going to give you information. Keep listening and always trust your gut. If the financial advisor or a divorce coach or anybody tells you to do something and it doesn't sit right with you, it's just a little unsettling, trust your gut. Don't do it. Say pause. Pause and research and ask for advice from other folks and get a second opinion and then a third opinion. but don't do something blindly, or if you don't understand it, or if you have a bad feeling, just don't do it.
Yeah, I couldn't back that. That's 100% statement I will back. If your attorney, your divorce coach, your financial planner, your energy healer, I don't care who it is. If anybody you're working with says, do this, and it just doesn't feel right, then yeah, I'm with you. Don't do it. Unless until you research more and find out what might be behind that recommendation.
Yeah,
If people want to reach out to you, find out more about what you do, or get in touch with you and say, hey, I want to feel stronger, safer, and better about my finances, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
my website is lookbothwaysfinancial.com. And my email is Kaki, Kaki, at lookbothwaysfin.com. And I will be also launching a podcast soon called Look Both Ways Financial. So look for that in December.
Definitely, definitely. And this will, yeah, your podcast will be out by the time this comes out. So everybody needs to go look on their favorite podcast site, wherever it may be, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, whatever you look on, and find Look Both Ways. I love this. Thank you so much,
Yes.
Kaki.
Thank you, Mardi, for having me. This is wonderful.
Thank you. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in and listening. I know I've learned some stuff, and I'm going to do a little more thinking on my finances now after having this conversation. I want to thank you for listening in and welcome you back to another episode of the D-Shift podcast, dropping next Tuesday. Thanks for listening and supporting the D-Shift podcast. If you would like to attend live trainings by our amazing guests and have a chance to ask questions and get answers from our experts, join the D-Shift crew. For more details and to sign up, head on over to www.divorcecoachforwomen and click on the podcast page.